Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and to a video that has been a while in the making. I have talked about this a couple of times in other videos, but I'm finally sitting down to make it. And that is my ankylosing spondylitis journey. So while I am telling this story of the journey, I thought it would be a really good idea to work on my Mythomorphia page spread of Cerberus. So this is from, just move the microphone, Kerby Rosanes Mythomorphia. For those that don't know, I have a goal in 2023 to finish this book, so I've been working quite a bit in this book. I need to complete 6 and a bit pages per month, so there's a lot to do in this book. So I'm going to do some real-time colouring as I work on this while I tell this story. Now I'll bring you in closer. So there's a couple of things about what I'm going to talk about today. First of all, this is going to be a long video because this is a long story. I actually have 4 pages worth of bullet point notes in my diary of what I need to cover in this video, so I may even split this up into 2 parts. We'll see how we go. I will do my best to be concise. I am a rambler. Anyone that knows me knows I can ramble, so I will do my best to try and keep this concise, but there is a lot to cover in this. Also a quick note, I'm currently recording this at midnight on a Sunday morning now. It's after midnight, so Sunday morning now. And so if you are hearing a lot of noise in the background, it is because I live in the centre of town and I am surrounded by bars and pubs, and they are all going hard at the moment. But that's also why I'm recording this now, because I generally don't sleep on Saturday nights because of town. So hey, why not? So I'm also going to be working on this page in Prismacolor. I will list the colours I use down below, so you can have a nosy if you want to use these same colours on your page. And then the final disclaimer that I need to make before we start this video, and this is very, very important. So while this story is my personal journey of ankylosing spondylitis and everything that I have experienced with it, I am not a medical professional. Now, I do work in the medical field. I work in a medical laboratory, but I am not a doctor. I am not a rheumatologist. I am not a specialist. I just have my own personal experience, and what I talk about in this video does not constitute medical advice. If you have any concerns, please see your medical professional. Again, this is my journey, my experiences. Everyone has their own personal medical history, underlying conditions, and individual differences, and you need a medically trained professional if you suspect you do have ankylosing spondylitis or any sort of medical condition. So please see your medical professional. Alright, so to begin this video, I have split this journey into 4 parts. So in the first part, I'm going to talk about what the heck ankylosing spondylitis is and how it presents. And then in part 2, I'm going to talk about my journey up to getting a diagnosis. In part 3, I'm going to talk about the fall and the diagnosis, which was a major event in this journey. And then in part 4, I'm just going to talk about what is happening now in my life and what I hope for the future and see for the future. And again, I will do my absolute best to try and be concise, but there's a lot to cover. Alright, so part 1. What the heck is ankylosing spondylitis? So ankylosing spondylitis, or AS, is a autoimmune inflammatory arthritis. So what it is it is an autoimmune response to that your body has, and instead of attacking what is causing the autoimmune response in your body, it will attack your spine. And as a result of it attacking your spine actually inflames, hence inflammatory arthritis. as it inflames and becomes damaged, your spine can also fuse together over many a year, leading to, it's like described as being like a bamboo back, where the spine is essentially fused together. Now, ankylosing spondylitis also can attack other large joints, notably your hips, your knees, your shoulders, your hands, your ankles, your neck, and scarily your ribs. The ribs are the one of the ones in particular too that they like to watch out for. So as the autoimmune response happens and your joints are attacked, the bones themselves also becomes subjective to degeneration. They can become brittle, so you actually have an increased risk of fractures, including compression fractures, just from your own body weight, especially on your spine. And then because of if they attack your ribs can become fused, which can cause breathing issues. It's a rarer complication, but it is a complication. And then, as well as attacking your larger joints, ankylosing spondylitis can also attack your organs. So notably, it can attack your aorta in your heart, so causing inflammation in your heart, which is scary. It can affect your lungs, as said before, when the ribs get fused together. It can also attack, for those that have ovaries, it can attack people's ovaries, and they will have polycystic ovaries or endometriosis or another inflammatory ovarian condition. It can also attack your bowels and cause inflammatory bowel syndrome. Noticing a theme, all inflammatory. And then the other thing that it can attack is your blood vessels in your eyes and cause those to inflame, causing a condition called uveitis. Yeah, so there's no specific cause, but there is a genetic link, in particular the gene HLA-B27. And this is the genetic marker that is often tested when they are investigating an inflammatory arthritic condition such as ankylosing spondylitis. There's also an increased risk if another family member has a positive diagnosis for inflammatory arthritis. Now, inflammatory arthritis is a banner term, so there's about 6 different subtypes of inflammatory arthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis is one of them. Psoriatic arthritis is another form of inflammatory arthritis. There are some juvenile subtypes. I don't admittedly know them all off by heart. A lot of them have got really weird long names. So I do remember psoriatic being one of them because I have a family member who was being investigated for psoriatic arthritis as well. Because again, there's that familial connection. There is also no cure. It is just a treatment management plan. It is not a diagnosis that can be cured. The diagnosis itself is often missed or delayed in diagnosis, and that is because the most common complaint of ankylosing spondylitis is a stiff back that is sore and painful in the morning and resolves after a few hours of movement. And this is often written off by people. Sometimes this stiffness and pain can also occur if you sit too long in one like in a chair and you don't move, such as like in watching a movie or for working. But again, it generally resolves itself with a bit of movement. And as such, a lot of the time people just write this off as bad posture, sleeping in the wrong position, sleeping too deeply, and this condition is not diagnosed. And if you do go to the doctor about back pain, sometimes it's just written off as generic back pain because back pain is a very common complaint. Yeah, and unfortunately, this diagnosis delay is what occurred with me. So, how my journey began, the journey to a diagnosis. This is part 2. I'm going to need a lot of liquid. There's going to be a lot of talking in this video. So, now with review with my rheumatologist and my doctor and other medical professionals, we believe that my first potential inflammation attack was way back in 2010. That is as far back as I think I can trace the disease to. It is possible I had it earlier. It's possible that it did not occur that early. But again, a lot of what I was presenting with at the time was just some sore backs. I also started having random joint swelling, in particular my knees and my hand, my right hand. But as somebody who did a lot of art over this period between going to art school, using art as a mental health crutch during difficult times, and just generally using your hand a lot, I put it down to overuse. And I put my knee swelling down to my weight because I was significantly bigger at the time. And this is often what happened with doctors as well. So when I did mention to doctors that I had random joint swelling, I was told, lose some weight. Or I was told it's part of your mental health. There's clearly nothing swollen in your joints. It's in your head, essentially. And this was a repeating occurrence many a time between 2010 and 2018. And it got to a point where I stopped discussing this with doctors. Because when I did manage to get a doctor's appointment and see a doctor, often the joint had returned to its regular size. It was no longer swollen. So there was no evidence of my joints swelling. And then in 2015, on New Year's Eve, I had joints that had been swollen for a few days, but then my back spasmed. And it spasmed so badly that I had to call in sick to work the next day, which is great when it's New Year's Day and you work retail and, they think you'd just been out partying. No, that was not the case. I took myself to an emergency doctor and paid a fortune because my back was locked in place. And at the time, it was believed to just be like a back spasm. I was given muscle relaxants and basically sent away. And my swollen joints weren't considered. Now the inflammation did go down because as part of those muscle relaxants I was also given steroids, which is part of the key that we'll talk about later. But yeah, at the time, again, I was just told lose some weight, and that was the last time I sort of talked about the pain, because at this point I've been burned by so many doctors fobbing off so much of my health due to either my size or my mental health, being a woman who was significantly larger and going through mental health difficulties, that I did not discuss a lot of these things with doctors. So as we move into 2018, I start doing a lot better. I am stronger mentally. I move out into my apartment on my own. I am working full time. We're moving into 2019 and I start studying for my work diploma, which eventually leads to the confidence for me to return to school to go for my bachelor in psychology. I'm doing really well. I've also changed my general practitioner, my doctor. The doctor that I changed to happened to be very close to where I worked. So close, in fact, that every day on the way to work, I would bump into my doctor walking into work as I walked into my own work. And we would say hi and acknowledge each other, and then she would see me walking home. So she knew that I was doing exercise every single day. She would often bump into me on the weekend, taking some of the walking paths around Taranaki. So when I went to see her about different things, she never brought up my weight because she knew that I was fit and healthy. Yes, I was still a bigger person, but I was also walking an hour a day. I was taking care of myself physically. I was doing all the right things. I just so happened to be a bit bigger, and I was starting to lose weight due to finally taking care of my physical health. So if I went to her with one condition or another or one complaint, the first response was never, you need to lose weight, because she knew I was doing the right things. So when I went to her because I was tired a lot and I wasn't feeling 100%, it was not a case of, okay, well, of course you're tired, you're lugging around all this extra body weight. She's like, no, I know what you're doing. Let's get some vitamin tests and just make sure you're getting everything right in your diet. And that's when we found out that I was very low in iron. So, of course, I was very tired. And, so it was nice to have a doctor that I was starting to actually connect with and start to open up about things. But I still did not bring up the joints, because at that point I had fully convinced myself that it was due to, like, maybe I'd rolled my ankle and I just didn't remember. I was a clumsy girl. I'd broken my arms over 14 times at this point. I was that clumsy girl. So, maybe my hands were swollen because I had just done too much drawing the night before and, my hands just needed a break. My back was sore because I had just been sitting too long and I needed to go for a walk. Like, there was little excuses that I told myself that I had believed because that is what had been brought up to me. And then in 2020, we all know what happens. The start of 2020, the world went crazy. And I was working in a medical laboratory. So you can imagine that work went absolutely nuts. While all my friends were posting about being at home and working from home and isolation, we were in the lab processing as many specimens as we could, as quickly as we could, because we needed results. And while I was working with the lab and doing this massive global response, I was still studying for my bachelor. So working for a global pandemic response, studying, luckily school was very understanding and gave me a lot of extensions at this time, because clearly we had other priorities. But to say that I was just a little bit stressed was a bit of an understatement. And the thing is, with this autoimmune condition, stress is a big trigger. And while this wasn't the final blow, this definitely was a contributing factor. I became very stressed and my immune system went into overdrive. And during the year of 2020, I ended up catching strep throat a number of times. And that is a known response of my body. When I get sick, the first thing that happens is my throat becomes sore. It's always been the case. So I've always known a sore throat means that I'm getting run down and tired and I need to slow down. And once again, I was starting to get a lot of sore throats. So I was trying to be conscious of this while also working in a lab during a global pandemic and studying for a bachelor. Yeah. But we did our best. We coped, we survived, we pulled together, and luckily I was in New Zealand and we had quite an immediate response, so things did settle down relatively quickly. Not permanently, but we didn't deal with it like a lot of other countries did in the world. So by the middle of 2020, things were opening up, things were back to normal, and I happened to be visiting my doctor. And the reason why I was visiting my doctor on 18th of June 2020 was that I was experiencing extreme period pain. And now that I had a doctor that believed me about the pain, I decided I would approach her about the pain and see about getting a treatment to help with my ovaries. I had been previously diagnosed as having polycystic ovaries when I was a younger person, but I wanted to start looking at possibly if there was something more going on because the pain just felt even more extreme, and also I hadn't had a good scan of my ovaries in a number of years, and I did wonder if maybe there was some more cysts growing or something. The pain just felt extreme. And so when I was explaining this to my doc, I was like, she asked me, how bad are the periods? And I was like, they're a period, they're painful. Pain's normal during your period, and kind of laughed it off. And she just looked at me dead straight and went, pain is never normal. And the way that she said that line, something just clicked in me. And she just gave me this look and she's like, Amy, are you in pain? And it was the first time that a doctor sat down and listened to me as I talked about my pain. And so I told her about how, I had joints that would swell up and swell down, and, I would get sore. I didn't bring up the back at this time because I didn't click the back with the swollen joints. The swollen joints was more permanent to me, whereas the back was just like stiff from sitting too long. So I didn't click about the back. I only told her about how some of my joints swelled up every once in a while, and I couldn't explain it, and it didn't match an injury, or it could have been like overworking, but it seemed to occur sometimes when I hadn't done a lot of work, and it just couldn't really be explained. And so a couple of things happened as a response to this. First off, yes, I did get my IUD put in for my ovaries, an investigation into my ovaries, and yes, they found that I have endometrial cysts outside my ovaries. So, yep, good times. But then, as I had mentioned about the joint swelling, my doctor sent me for some blood tests. She sent me for a CRP marker, which is an inflammation marker, and she sent me for a rheumatoid arthritis test, as well as a few other tests, just to rule out potential things that it could have been. But these were the two noticeable ones for me. But of course, I was not in a flare-up when I was talking to the doctor about this. So all my results came back normal, and I had nothing to show my doctor. So she rang me up a couple of days later once all the results were in. She's like, look, I do believe that you do get pain. I believe you when you say you're in pain. I just can't explain your pain right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on your history fibromyalgia, which means that you have chronic pain, but we can't explain why. And if you get, the joints swelling up, let me know, and we'll see if we can investigate and figure out what's going on. So I went, okay, yep, thank you very much. And, it was very freeing to have a doctor say, I believe you. And this is kind of a key part in the journey, and I need you to understand that history of having doctors not believe me and then having one doctor believe me. So that plays into what happens next. We're up to page 2 of the notes. So, at the end of 2020, of course, we have another little mini lockdown in New Zealand, so I get stressed once again. Things get backed up, doctors getting overwhelmed, the lab's getting busy. I try to avoid seeing my doctor at all possible because I know that the doctors are busy trying to deal with more important issues right now. So I don't go back to the doctor about my swollen joints because honestly they flare up and they flare down so quickly that I can't even capture them to see the doctor in time. So it just doesn't occur. And then the 19th of November, I get strep throat once again. But again, strep throat is a regular occurrence, so I basically, doctor emails a script for antibiotics, I go on those antibiotics, it clears me up. Nothing new, nothing out of the ordinary for me, but this is the point where my autoimmune system crashes. It is just blowing out, and it has had enough, and I officially move into a flare-up. Now, ankylosing spondylitis is marked by periods of a flare-up and periods of remission, which is also one of the reasons why my joints had never been picked up, because I had a mini flare-up and then I'd gone back into remission. And these can rectify on their own, but sometimes they need help to move you back into remission. And this time I was going to need help. So after I got my antibiotics, I also get a message from my doctor because the certain borders had opened up and she could pop back to England to see her family. So she was going on holiday for a couple of months to go over to England to allow for, having to isolate when she got over there, see her family, come back and then re-isolate, and then she would be back at the doctor's practice. So I got a little letter saying, just be aware you are going to be seeing locums for the next few months, but also it's the Christmas period. I understand, and I'm not expecting to use the doctor for anything significant over the next few months, so fine, whatever. But yeah, get the strep, take the antibiotics, and then I start getting pain. I start getting the pain, but instead of being just a knee or a finger that's swelling, it starts in my shoulder. And at first I just think, oh, I'm just sleeping wrong, so I ignore it on day 1. And then in day 2, it's spread down through my shoulder and it's all across my chest. And it feels sort of like I've pulled a muscle in my chest wall. And so then I'm like, well, you have just been sick. You have just had strep. So maybe you have pulled a chest muscle. You were coughing a bit, like maybe you've just been coughing too much. So I ignore it. And then on day 3, it starts really radiating over my whole shoulder, tackling onto the back of my shoulder and my ribs and all over sort of my upper left chest. And I'm starting to get a bit like, okay, this is getting a bit worrying. But the thing is, it doesn't feel like my heart. It feels like the muscles and the structure around my heart. It feels like my ribs. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting a bit worried. But again, it feels like a pulled muscle. This is not a heart attack. My pulse is fine. I feel fine. I'm just in pain. And then on day 4, the pain starts radiating down my left arm. And I know that that is a clear sign of a heart attack. So I'm getting really worried at this stage. So I ring up my doctor, my doctor's practice, and I get the nurse. And I just explain, I'm like, hey, so this has happened. I had strep recently, but I've started developing these pain symptoms, and I start explaining them. I'm like, it doesn't feel like a heart attack, but I am worried because of how it's presenting. She's like, you are right to be worried. I'm worried too. Come in. We're going to do an ECG, and I'm going to get the doctor to see you straight away because we just want to rule this out. It doesn't sound like a heart attack, but I would rather be safe than sorry. So I head into the doctor's and we do an ECG, which does come back completely normal. My heart is absolutely fine. And he takes a listen to my chest and stuff. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to guess that you have probably pulled some chest muscles while you had strep throat. It is a very rare sprain, but it does occur and it does feel like a heart attack. So you did the right thing in coming in. So, that was nice. He was very nice about it because I was like, I'm so sorry to be wasting your time when, we're dealing with a lot in the world right now and stuff. But he was very nice about it and told me I'd done the right thing and basically just sent me home with some paracetamol and told me to get some rest. So I take it, I carry on, and then I'm still feeling that shoulder pain. It doesn't really rectify. Except I get strep again on the 11th of December because my immune system is in free fall. It can't fight anything off. It's attacking my joints rather than fighting. So once again, I go back to the doctor's, I get another prescription, and another note goes on my file in the new year that with my regular GP, we need to follow up on why I keep getting strep because it's happening a lot. But we're about to head into the Christmas period. All the medical centres are shutting down. Everyone's going on Christmas, New Year break. It's summertime in New Zealand, so a lot of places shut down for a few weeks and everyone has a good break. And I'm preparing for that as well. The thing is, the pain doesn't go away. The pain starts increasing. It starts spreading from my shoulder, from my left side. It's now radiating down my hands. It then starts radiating down my spine and getting into my hips, and then it starts appearing in my right hand, and it's starting to make its way down my body. it's now at a point where I cannot sleep properly, because when I try to turn in the middle of the night, I am yelping as I'm trying to pull myself to roll over, because the act of just rolling over is excruciating in the pain it's causing me. But of course it's Christmas holidays and everyone is shut down, and I can't see a doctor unless I go and see a emergency doctor who can't do anything for me. So I make an appointment for when the medical practice opens to see the doctor, which is the 11th of January. Now I'm seeing the locum because my regular GP is on holiday. The locum doesn't really seem to take it too much. She orders a repeat of the inflammation tests and the rheumatoid arthritis tests that I had done earlier in the year. She just also gives me some Panadol, some ibuprofen, and again just says, you just need to rest, you're in a bit of pain, maybe it's your fibromyalgia, which had been put on my medical records. So I walk away feeling very deflated, like, oh, she doesn't really believe me that I'm in a lot of pain. But I go away, I get my medication, and I start living on Panadol. By the 25th of January, the swelling had increased so badly that it is now spread right down to my ankle on my left side. My left side ankle, my left side shoulder, my right side hand, my hips, and my back are excruciating. I'm in so much pain that I have to use my grandmother's walking stick to help me mobilize. I cannot wear shoes. I cannot sleep with a sheet on my foot. And I turn up to the doctors after begging an appointment to see the same locum. I am clearly in pain. I cannot fit shoes on my feet. My knuckle is swollen. I am clearly inflamed. I cannot bend down. I cannot sit properly. And the locum is very hesitant to do anything. She blames the fibromyalgia. She issues me narcotics. She will not do an x-ray. She will not investigate any further. She just says, it's your fibromyalgia. Here's some pain meds. Go away, is the vibes I get. I walk out, and the very first thing I do is I go straight up to the reception at my doctor's and I ask for the date when my GP is returning and I can see her, because I know something more serious is going on and she does not believe me. And at this point, I do not want to go through that process again of being fobbed off by doctors when I am clearly in pain. As you can see, this is very, yeah. So the first date that I can see my GP is the 11th of February. I booked the very first appointment. And in the meantime, I grin and bear it. And it is hell. I start needing to taxi to anywhere. Family pick me up and drop me off as much as they can. Work can see that I cannot wear shoes, which means I cannot go in the main part of the laboratory. So I'm kept to areas where I can be, because you can't work in a laboratory without closed-toe shoes, and I cannot wear shoes. My left foot is so swollen. My right finger is out to here. I cannot bend my hand. This is the period where I am actually scared about never being able to draw again. I can't draw. I can't create. I am an artistic person who has always used creativity as their crux when going through something that is mentally challenging. So not having that outlet was horrendous for me. Yeah, there's a lot of tears, a lot of pain meds. But in my head, it's just 11th of Feb. 11th of Feb, 11th of Feb. That is all I'm telling myself. The other big thing that I start doing is I start taking photos and videos and capturing evidence, because I am making sure somebody believes me. And I still have those on my phone to this day, because I like to show people to make them understand how swollen I am. And I will insert some here, enjoy. I'll insert what I can without that's like appropriate to insert, because some of them aren't appropriate. So yeah. But yeah, so it gets to the week in February when my locum is gone and my GP is back. So I am counting down the days, and there's like 7 days, and then there's 6 days, and then there's 5 days, and I'm getting excited because we're getting really close, and I'm going to see my GP, and I have all this evidence on my phone. I'm like, you're going to believe me this time. You can't not believe me. My ankle's out this big. Like, at this point, I'm having to use crutches to mobilize. Not even one walking stick. I need full crutches, which luckily I had from an old injury. So, and I'm barely hobbling. I'm not sleeping. I'm just counting down the days. And then it's the 8th of Feb. And my dad drops dead. It was very unexpected. There was no medical indication. It was just a sudden blood clot that caught in his heart. He happened to drop dead in front of a doctor. Not my doctor, another doctor. But yeah, everything that could have happened to save him happened, and he did not survive. It was very unexpected. But the main takeaway from that adds to the story, is now suddenly there's also a funeral to plan, which means my stress levels are through the roof. Now, I do want to stipulate, my mum, my brothers were there. Their emotional response to the situation was to shut down, because it was very unexpected. Fully understand. My emotional response in a situation I cannot control is to look for things that I can control. I could not control what was going on with my body. I could not control seeing my doctor straight away. I could control taking photos and having evidence and looking for ways to put some control back on me in the situation. So when Dad died very suddenly and everything spun out, the thing I could control was the funeral arrangements. So I went into organisation mode as a coping technique. But that did result in a lot of stress, because I think it was the 13th of Feb, like that week, we also went back into a mini lockdown, like limited social gathering and stuff like that. So yeah, we're also planning a funeral around COVID. Yeah. Anyone who had to plan a funeral during COVID fully understands the stress that situation causes. But that's a side story. So yeah, 8th of Feb, that happens. So in the middle of everything that's going on, I also have this doctor's appointment that I have been waiting a month a month for, basically. So it's a lot. But the 11th of Feb rolls around, and I'm there for the very first appointment with my GP. I'm in the waiting room. My left ankle, so swollen. I'm not even wearing a shoe at this point. I've got a skirt, so you can see very clearly my leg is swollen. I have the crutches, but my hand is so fat, like the finger is out here, that I can't even use this hand on the crutch. So I'm kind of having to use my elbow and my palm, because I can't bend my hand, like my fingers are locked. I can barely pressurize on this hand because my shoulder is so sore. I can't even sit properly because I'm in so much pain with my back. Like, I am clearly in agony in the waiting room. And the receptionist is just looking at me and is like, I'm going to go and get the doctor. And I'm like, please. My doctor comes out in a waiting room full of people, takes one look at me and says, wow, this isn't effing you. And I break down crying right then and there. Because she sees me. She has seen me walking. She has seen me active around town. She knows how I normally am. So to see me like this, and it was like, she sees, and I break down. So I hobble back into her room. She pulls up everything the locum has put down, which is not a lot. I pull out all my photographic evidence. I lay out everything, including the fact that my dad had passed that week as well. So I'm obviously stressed to high water because, again, also working in a medical laboratory during a pandemic response, because we're still technically in a response. Also studying while all of this is still going on. Like, yeah, I do the most, apparently. But yeah, she listens to me for like 10 minutes as I lay out everything to her. She's like, I'm going to take a look, but I think this is inflammatory arthritis. Just like that. One look. And she looks over my joints. She sees the fact that my swelling is presenting on one side. So, as you've heard, I have been tested twice at that point for rheumatoid arthritis. That is an inflammatory arthritis, but it will present matching. So, like, fingers will swell identical on both sides, but I had swelling on one side. So she's like, okay, so this is a really big indicator that this is not rheumatoid, which we've tested you twice for now, so we know it's not rheumatoid. I think it's I think it's inflammatory arthritis. She's like, I suspect it's possibly ankylosing spondylitis, but I can't make that specific diagnosis. I need to send you to a rheumatologist for that diagnosis. And at that point, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to have to wait even longer to see a specialist, which I think she can see on my face straight away just how sad I am at the thought of having to wait, because I'm in just so much pain. Because keep in mind, this pain had started around the start of December. We're in the start of February now. Like, this is at 2 months of consistent excruciating pain. So I'm just like, I don't know. And she's like, don't worry, I've got temporary stuff we can do in the meantime. And if this works, this is a really good indication that this is inflammatory arthritis. So she starts pulling out a bunch of stuff. She's like, I'm going to send you for a genetic test for the gene marker HLA-B27. I'm also going to test your inflammatory response at the moment to see, so we have a recorded medical level of how inflamed you are for the specialist. Keep taking your photos, but I'm also going to start tracking this with blood work as well. But then the other thing she did was she gave me a prescription for steroids, because AS is an autoimmune response. By giving me the steroids, it settles down your immune system. And she's like, it's not a long-term solution, but it's a temporary solution. And if it works, not only will it help relieve a bit of the swelling, you should be able to mobilize for your dad's funeral. Because again, I had a funeral to go to. I was meant to be walking behind a casket. So, and then, bless her heart, she's also like, I'm also ringing you the day after the funeral and we're doing a mental health check-in. Even though you're strong mentally, I don't care, we're doing a check-in. Didn't even ask for that, didn't even bring up mental health. That's the kind of doctor she is. Cannot rank her high enough as a doctor. And yeah, she's like, and I'm going to do it as a phone appointment, so you don't even have to move, because I know how bad things hurt at the moment. So yeah, bless her heart, she was wonderful. But yeah, so I leave the doctor's appointment. My uncle is driving me around, because again, I can't mobilize, I can't drive, because it's, affects my driving. I'm in so much pain. So yeah, he's driving me around, because he's obviously around at the moment with everything going on. We go to the pharmacy, we go get the bloods done, we get the prednisone steroid, and I take my first dose. And within 4 hours of taking that dose, I am walking without my crutches. And again, I had been mobilizing with a walking aid for over a month at this point. So to suddenly be okay to mobilize without a walking aid, I was like, oh my God, we have an answer. I'm not crazy. This is not in my head. Something is causing my joints to swell. And it was just like this moment of relief. So yeah, the funeral happens on the Monday, and then on the Tuesday I have the follow-up appointment with my doctor. where she checks in on everything going on, but then she also checks in on, because some of the blood tests had come back, including my inflammation markers, which were through the roof, clearly inflamed. The genetic tests still need some time to come back. That will take a few weeks. But she asked about how my response has been on the prednisone. And so I tell her about how I was able to, start mobilizing within 4 hours of taking it without the walking stick. And I was able to, mobilize at the funeral to walk behind the casket, and just the genuine, impact it was having. It was not a full permanent response. I still obviously was dealing with a lot of pain overnight. I still had significant swelling, so I still couldn't really fit into shoes all that well. But it was a start, and at least it was an indication of the fact that this was an inflammatory arthritis. So Dawn, my GP, is like, this is fantastic. This is the exact evidence I needed. I'm going to send you to the rheumatologist at the hospital. I'm going to make clear the absolute critical state of how you've been surviving, and I'm going to get you through for a critical referral, because you live alone. You cannot keep existing like this. The only reason I have managed to survive everything going on was because I did not work full-time. I was a full-time student working part-time at that point, which meant I was at home a lot of the time, and honestly I was struggling in my studies at that point. School was being very understandable about everything going on. I did have the excuse of the lab, which was wonderful, but it was affecting my day-to-day life, and I was not doing a lot. I was not able to take care of myself. I was not able to cook that much or clean or do a simple thing like get groceries, or just even taking out the rubbish could be too much. So this was having a significant impact on my life. And one of the things that I had communicated to my doctor was how scared I was about showering, because I lived alone. And if I fell at any point, there was nobody around. So showering, getting changed, anything that involved me moving a lot was scary. So because of this, she sent through the referral. So the referral went through on the 12th of Feb was when the initial referral went through, and then the follow-up details went through the following week. So I think the 14th of Feb or 15th of Feb, roundabout. And this was sent through as an absolute critical referral, with an information about my state of living, the condition going on, the impact of my life, and the fact that I needed to see a rheumatologist urgently. Because of an overwhelmed medical system, Taranaki does not have a full-time rheumatologist. With a critical referral, the earliest I could see the rheumatologist was the 29th of April. Keep in mind, this referral was sent on the 15th of March for a critical referral. Yeah, so this is the point I really start breaking down. Again, this is a point where I cannot colour, I cannot draw, I cannot do art, and I start really falling apart. Which leads us into part 3. But I am going to do that as a second video, because this video is already long enough and part 3 is very impactful. Yeah, so if you want to continue listening to this story, it'll be up tomorrow. I hope you have enjoyed it so far and listening to it. Again, if anything of this story is resonating with you, with the symptoms and that, please do see your medical professional. Do not let my history of medical fob-offness dissuade you. If you need to see a doctor and a doctor does not believe you, go for a second opinion. Cannot stress it enough. I should have pushed years ago for this. I know better now. But yes. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I will be back in part 2 and we will carry on with this and we will talk about the fall. Bye, guys.